When I was asked to speak here today about my story, I was glad to be able to share. My story is one I've told many, many times at many oil classes, and I think it's a really important one because it's about hope. Because before being introduced to Young Living and essential oils, I had actually given up hope of being able to have a future to look forward to. My husband and I had stopped making plans for retirement and for a future that we knew would never come. So today I want to share my story of hope. This is my journey through pain. My name's Jennifer Stewart. I am just about 49 years old. I've reached the rank of executive in Young Living. I've been with Young Living for about just a little over 2.5 years. I am happily married to my husband, Cam, who's in the back there with me. We have 6 kids together and 3 grandkids. 2 of our kids are here today as well. And I have fibromyalgia. This is our family. There's 2 photos here. One is just last Christmas with all the kids, half of them all grown up. And the other one is from about 12, 13 years ago, before I got sick. 13 years ago, we sold our home and we bought some land, and my husband and I took a year off of work. We decided to build our own home, so we had the kids help us with everything, from hauling gravel to tying rebar to doing shingles on the roofs. And it was an incredible experience and a real family bonding experience. It took us a year to do it, and it was December when we were finally able to move into our house and out of the garage that we lived in for almost a year while building the house. After completing that house, we knew that in the new year we were going to have to get back to work. And we'd always pretty much had our own businesses. We were entrepreneurs. I had a lot of my own businesses, so did my husband before we were together, and we'd also had businesses together. And we had the opportunity to actually be able to purchase a business. And the business was a janitorial business, and we knew nothing about janitorial at all. But we decided to dive right into it because we knew running businesses and we thought it would be a great adventure. We bought the business and started in very early spring of 2007. And by late spring, I noticed that I wasn't feeling very well. I started to have not just tired feelings, but real fatigue. I was having headaches all the time. I had brain fog. All of my joints were starting to ache. They were burning. I had severely upset stomach. I had a hard time keeping any food down. It didn't matter what I ate, but I would be running to the bathroom. I was having trouble sleeping. I had tender spots that were developing on my body. The kids would come up to give me a hug, and I would just about collapse when they would squeeze on my back. By fall, I was missing 1 or 2 days a week of work, and it progressively got worse. Towards the middle of October, my husband too started to get very, very sick. We suspect it was either bronchitis or pneumonia, but we were business owners, so we both kept working. And then in November of 2017, our lives changed completely. My husband developed a severe cough that was so bad he couldn't stop coughing. He couldn't catch his breath, and we had to call the ambulance. He was admitted to hospital. They did chest x-rays and found he had broken almost all of his ribs from the coughing. They put him on oxygen, and his levels continued to drop. They told us that if they dropped much further, they'd have to intubate him, and by the end of the week, they weren't sure if he was going to make it. Luckily, he made it through, and 6 weeks later, he was released from the hospital, but the damage was done. His lungs were severely damaged, less than 50% capacity, and we later learned his bone marrow was damaged as well. My husband was now at home and unable to work. I was working all the time. The older kids were helping to look after the younger ones. The middle kids took over suppers, taking care of the house and chores. And the youngest ones watched their dad, helped him with his nebulizers, with oxygen, and even calling for the ambulance when it was needed. The stress made my fibromyalgia flare up, and I was missing now 3 to 4 days a week of work. I'd have days where the fatigue was so severe that my body felt like it was encased in concrete. I wasn't able to get out of bed. There was days I would have to crawl to the bathroom. Other days, it would take me half hour to get out of bed in the morning, The kids knew it took me at least 5 to 10 minutes just to walk down the stairs to wake them up for school in the morning. And in evenings that I was home from work, the kids would have to come upstairs so I could read them bedtime stories and kiss them goodnight. There was nights when I was working that the pain and fatigue was so severe and would overcome me that I would have to lie down on the floor in the middle of the building and wait for an hour so I could get the strength to get up to go home. About 5 years ago, I was finally diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and I cried. There was no cure, they told me, and there was very little they could do to help. And I knew I was going to have to actually spend the rest of my life in this pain and torture. And I didn't know if I had the strength to do it. But I had to, because if I didn't, who would be there to look after my kids and to take care of my husband? So I started looking for answers. At that time, I was taking 10 to 20 ibuprofen a day, another 10 to 20 Tylenol, 46 naproxen 600s that I've been given as a prescription, and it had little effect. I tried medication after medication specifically for fibromyalgia. They did nothing but make me sick. My husband and I had stopped thinking about a future, and we'd stopped making plans. I finally had a doctor that was substituting for my doctor, and he said, we need to treat this more aggressively. He gave me a highly powerful sleeping pill that would knock me out for hours so that I could get some deep restorative sleep. I was given drugs to help with long-term pain management control, which were pretty much for depression. I was put on tramadol, which is a synthetic version of morphine, because it was supposed to be less addictive than morphine. And with this drug cocktail, I did finally see a small light at the end of the tunnel. Most of my days, my pain was at about a 6 instead of an 8 or a 9 now. I was able to somewhat function again, but the drugs left me feeling fuzzy and completely drugged out, so I knew I had to find a better way. I started researching, Googling, and I found out that exercise was one of the very few things that actually helped for fibromyalgia, so I started using one of the ellipticals at one of the buildings I cleaned after I finished cleaning. I started doing yoga at home, and it helped a bit. I read about diet and found that a gluten-free diet helped with joint pain. So I started that and started eating more clean food, less processed food, and that helped a bit. I tried getting a TENS machine, which is like those Dr. Ho's you see on TV, and that helped a bit for some of the joint pain and tenderness. And then I hired a new lady to help me at my work to clean some of the buildings on the weekends for me so I could have a little bit of extra time off to spend with the family. And I was planning on going to visit my grandchildren in Calgary, and my husband and I were going to go, and the new girl was going to cover for the weekend for me. And just before we were about to leave, I started to develop a cold, but we decided we would still go because I hadn't seen the grandkids in a long time. So we went to go drop the keys off for her, and she noticed I was sniffling. She said, hold on just a second, I have something for you. And she came back with a little roller ball and handed it to me. And I said, thank you. I didn't know what it was, and I said, so what is this? And she says, oh, it's essential oils, they're for your cold. And I said, okay, thank you, what do I do with them? And she said, you can just roll them on and roll them on your chest, put them on the bottom of your feet, and you'll get better and you'll be able to spend time with your grandkids. So I used it. My husband didn't really like the stinky stuff in the car the whole drive out to Calgary, but I kept rolling it on. And surprise, surprise, the next day I actually felt better. And I got to enjoy my weekend with my grandkids. So when I got back home to go pick up the keys, I said to her, can I have like a dozen of these, please? I want to give them to all my friends and family. And she said, no, but you can come on out to an oil class and you can learn about the oils. So I did. I went out to an oil class and sat around and listened to all of these people as these oils were passed around talking about how these oils changed their lives, the things that they did for them. And I thought, this is going to be the one thing that just might make a difference and might give me my life back. So I got a kit and took it home and used everything, every day. I wanted to really have a chance of this making a difference in my life. And about 3 months later, I sat down one day and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I had a headache. Now I had headaches every single day and all of a sudden they were gone. I couldn't remember the last time I picked up a Tylenol or an Advil or an Naproxen. 6 months later, I realized that the fatigue was not nearly as bad, and I didn't have nearly as much joint pain. And slowly, I just replaced all the items in my home with Young Living products. And if you've ever been to my house, it looks like a Young Living advertisement in my house, because everywhere in the house there's Young Living products. In our janitorial business, we removed all of the chemicals, and we used nothing but thieves. So we weren't using any chemicals at work anymore either. My body was slowly starting to heal itself. Now I was no longer constantly being bombarded with toxic chemicals. Finally, 1 year ago, I went and talked to my doctor and said I was feeling so well I wanted to stop my medications. And he said, yes, I could do that. He warned me that coming off tramadol, I would go through some severe withdrawal for weeks. And my husband did raindrop massages for me every night to get me through it. And I was able to get off all of my medications. I no longer take anything for my fibromyalgia. So since then, I've been able to get my life back. I'm doing things that I haven't done in over 10 years. I love going kayaking. I do it every chance I can. I like going bicycling on the trails. I went out, that's me rope climbing. I went with my daughter's school to Squamish, and we went to the rope climbing center, and I was terrified. But I did that. I could never have thought of doing that even a few short years ago. And we also went out to the natural water slides out by Enderby, so we were hiking. So these are things that I could never have done before. My husband is also seeing the benefits. He is off oxygen. He's not using his nebulizer, and he doesn't use any more puffers, and he hasn't had a blood treatment in over a year. We are finally looking forward to the future, and we're making plans again. I still have fibromyalgia, and in times of stress it does flare up again, but it's only for a short time. Young Living has changed our lives, and it's given us hope again. I share my story so that others realize there is a better way, and so that they too can make plans for a brighter future. Thank you.